I just want to thank Wanda for the stories that you told. I think it really underscores the power in telling the stories of those that are most directly impacted by systemic neglect and abuse. And I don't think that it's any coincidence that, you know, part of what I'm going to talk about, the mining industry disproportionately targets Native communities. So over 50% of gold mining is on Native land, and over 70% of uranium mining is also taken from Native land. So you can see how communities that are, you know, marginalized in nation states are often targeted for abuse and exploitation. I'm going to actually focus most of my comments today on the monk school and the monk school's role in perpetuating impunity in the mining industry globally and also in other spheres of global affairs. And I'm going to start with a video that I think will really frame what I'm going to say afterwards and really kind of give you an idea of the character of Peter Monk, whom the monk school is named after. So we'll start with the video.
Corporate social responsibility is not something that is done in response to our religion, or in response to NGOs, or in response to recent trends of fashion. It is part of our DNA. Yes, we have hospitals. Yes, we provide clean water. Yes, we provide housing. But much more importantly, by moving into these countries and developing their minds, and most of these countries now are developing countries, we provide, way beyond the importance of money, we provide human dignity. We provide an opportunity for those people to earn their money rather than hold out their hands and depend on charity. And if anything has been proven and has been taught by the global society over the past quarter century, or past half a century, is that if there is choice between creating dependency or a choice of giving them opportunity and dignity, inevitably the second alternative is what produces the long-lasting results. That's where Barrick is so outstanding. That's where Barrick, as a Canadian company with Canadian ethics, with Canadian values, with Canadian morality, has been able to operate throughout the world. And yes, we are attacked. We are attacked continuously, and we are attacked often by a very noisy and very articulate opposition. And while we're pouring in, as Aaron showed you, $4 billion in wages at labor rates which are 4, 5, 6 times higher than prevailing wages, if the prevailing opportunities even arise, while we provide all kinds of community social benefits, and while without exception, the local communities, the local governments, the local structures are dying for Barrick's jobs, for Barrick's investment, and the president of Dominican Republic, the president of Argentina, the president of Chile, I personally talked to all of them. There wasn't one of them who did not say, please, 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 Barrick, please put your money into our country. We need foreign direct investments. We need employment opportunities, particularly in those remote regions where the mines are located and no other alternate opportunity exists. So while we offer the dignity, the opportunity, the financial benefit, and ultimately the prosperity and security, we have a group of people opposing us. And please, I'm not here to talk down the many highly qualified, wonderfully socially contributing NGOs, many of whom we are in partnership with. But there is a growing rogue element, an element that wants nothing but stop development. But stopping development is one thing, because you believe in nature, believe in the purity of water, But please, what can they offer to those 20,000 people we employ? What can they compensate them with? When we don't operate, when we don't provide billions in wages, when we don't provide our social services, what is the alternative? To fall back on global aid and charity? This is not a viable alternative. So while we love NGOs and we work with them and we respect them and they made major contributions to improving our world and our children's world, we equally have to stand up for those who are just on principle, are against any kind of development. And instead of working constructively with us to create an improved and better mining operation, an improved and better working conditions, and find solutions that work for both people, a win-win solution, they say, whatever you do, we don't want you. Go away. And what are the people going to do? Line up for social benefits in the remote hills of Tanzania or Peru? There ain't none. So there's no alternative.
There's no alternative.
You must stop me.
Yes.
I do get very emotionally involved. I would be totally irresponsible being the founder of this company and being around now in the gold business for a while if I would not tell you my views about gold. And I always put a caveat especially when I talk in Europe and they ask me about gold. Yes, I work for a gold company, they pay me. So a grain of salt when you're listening to me. They wouldn't pay me if I would say anything bad about gold. So put that into your consideration when you're evaluating my comments.
So that was Peter Monk, the chairman and founder of the world's largest gold mining company, Barrick Gold, and also, in a sense, founder of the Monk School of Global Affairs in a highly irregular process that gives him a lot of power over the program activities of the Monk School, evidence for which I will talk about right now. So I have a PowerPoint, just because I think that things are easier to pay attention to when there's a visual accompanying it. So I'm the editor, organizer with protestbarrick.net. It's an all-volunteer group, network, global network of community groups, NGOs, all organized against Barrick Gold. So this issue is not just about Barrick Gold. It's, in a sense, a tactic for exposing the fact that mining injustices are extremely systemic in nature. So what we did was we took one company, the world's largest, and we investigated them in like 10 different countries to show that there are systemic abuses related to this industry. Also, Barrick is particularly involved in promoting a voluntary approach to dealing with issues of systemic abuse. And so that's another reason why they deserve to be highlighted. I didn't join this campaign because I was like, oh, Barrick's emblematic, therefore I should target them. In fact, I used to work for a group called corpwatch.org, and in 1 year of working for that company, I just happened to run into 3 representatives of impacted communities. And so by the time I met the third, which was a Western Shoshone in the States, I decided that something had to be done about this company. I had a Google alert showing that Barrick was being protested in all these different countries around the world. So I started cold calling and cold emailing, these grassroots campaigns against this company. And we got together and we did a global day of action in 2007 against Barrick Gold, and we released a report that documented all of these different cases. And I myself have visited Barrick's mines in Tanzania, PNG, Papua New Guinea, Chile, Argentina, the US, and Australia, where I mentioned earlier, disproportionately, actually in all of those communities outside of Argentina, Native communities are on the front lines of the resistance against this company. So not only are the abuses associated with the mining industry systemic, but there is also systemic denial on behalf of Canada that maintains this industry impunity around the world, while it invasively meddles in the politics of other countries, especially regarding the management of natural resources. So that's another thing that we have to understand about Canada, is that not only are the diplomats and just the entire mechanism of Canada upholding this impunity and ensuring that there are no laws in Canada to prevent the human rights abuses of their mining companies abroad, but also they actively meddle in the policies of other countries, which is probably of interest to people thinking about what the role the monk school play in Iran with respect to the management of natural resources. Sorry, I'm repeating things that I think are important to emphasize. So next, and just to note that my website contains almost 1,000 articles sorted into issue area and country area of Barrick doing bad things around the world. So there's a large amount of evidence. This is an interesting quote, as if that video that we watched wasn't character enough for Mr. Monk. Here's one where he's talking about how much he loves Pinochet. So I'll give you guys just a chance to read that.
Can you read it out loud?
Sure. It's hard for me to turn around, so let's see. I have that right here. So what you saw in the video was a shareholders meeting in 2010. This was a shareholders meeting in 1996, where Peter Monk said that he was, praising Pinochet for transforming Chile from a wealth-destroying socialist state to a capital-friendly model that is being copied around the world. Regarding Pinochet's human rights record, Monk said that they can put people in jail. I have no comment on that. I think it may be true. But I think the end justifies the mean because it brought wealth to an enormous number of people. If you ask someone who's in jail, he'll say no, but that's the wonderful thing about our world. We can have the freedom to disagree, in this case with political prisoners. And, which obviously, I'm sure the irony isn't lost on you guys. And of course, Chile being transformed, from this wealth-destroying socialist state, it took the complete destruction of the environment. And one of the campaigns I'm working on in northern Chile is actually trying to save the last unpolluted river of northern Chile, because a lot of this transformation dealt with wholesale. Oh my God, I'm so much out of time. I said I was going to give an extra 5 minutes. Okay, sorry. But they're trying to save the last unpolluted valley of northern Chile because of the destruction wrought by these neoliberal policies to the environment. Next. So something I've been involved with is a campaign called Monk out of U of T, and this deals specifically with the corruption around the Monk School. And I really just want to go over some of the key players in the Monk School to show how the Monk School has played a key role in upholding Canadian impunity around the globe. So the first person I'm going to go over is David Naylor. You can see him in the next slide. So there he is giving a lecture in Convocation Hall. We did a little Monk out of U of T banner drop. And this was a number of years ago we did this, in 2000, it might have been 2010 that we did this. And the reason that we did this was because Naylor played a huge role in approving the Monk contract in a very secretive process that actually went over the head of the governing council. And for those that are involved in student politics here, you know that the governing council is no progressive institution itself. It has 50% corporate membership. And so the fact that the approval of the Monk contract had to be so secretive that it couldn't even include them says a lot about this contract that basically gave away control of the Monk School in many ways. So the reason it was irregular, I'll go over into some details, is because basically the chair informed, I'll read this. It's on the most recent article on monk out of uoft.wordpress.com. But at a governing council orientation session on September 10th, 2009, the chair informed governors that the first council meeting scheduled for October 22nd, 2009 would be canceled due to insufficient items on the agenda. This cancellation was invalid according to the council's own bylaw number 2 because it had been decided on by an online ballot. And it was also highly irregular, given that this was the first cycle of meetings of the governing council that had been canceled in over 10 years. So they canceled this meeting. It's the first time in 10 years that they've done this. And the cancellation of this meeting actually allowed for an extension of the summer executive authority. And that allowed a concentration in decision-making powers to the president, the chair, and the vice chair of the governing council in consultation with the chairs and vice chairs of the boards. So basically what happened was they canceled this meeting, they concentrated decision-making power, and it was during this time that the monk contract was given the go-ahead. Many years later, President Naylor, the president of the University of Toronto at the time, who was one of the key players, the small handful of players that oversaw the approval of this monk contract, well, about a month ago we just learned that Naylor just got signed to the board or just got named to the board of directors for Barrick Gold. So, as if you had any doubt that it was a very corrupt process establishing the monk school, we had our suspicions confirmed. Next slide. So, next major player with the monk school is this woman, Marquita Evans. And she was actually the founding director of the Monk Center for International Studies. She also happened to be the first CSR counselor, that stands for Corporate Social Responsibility, for the Canadian government. So she was appointed by Harper, basically, to be the person that would mediate conflict between mining companies and mining impacted communities. Her position was criticized as being designed to fail, and 4 years after she was appointed, she just quit very recently, we can see that the critics were in fact correct. Of the 6 cases that she opened during her tenure, 5 were closed with absolutely no resolution. 3 of the cases were closed because the corporation in question decided to walk away from the process. So that was like a big issue with her position as CSR counselor, was that she was not allowed to investigate corporations that did not agree to be investigated. Okay, thank you, 5 minutes. So she was also the founder of the Devonshire Initiative, which was named after Devonshire Place, which was where the Monk Center was located. Mm-hmm. And an important thing about the Devonshire Initiative is that they were founded the same exact month that the Canadian Roundtables on Corporate Social Responsibility released their consensus report. This was a consensus report that was developed by industry folks, like mining companies and the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada, and civil society groups like Mining Watch Canada or the Halifax Initiative. So this was a consensus report that was going to spell a way to move forward to address the systemic abuses of mining companies. Instead, Marquita has a Devonshire Initiative, where these other NGOs, development NGOs, who are willing to work with mining companies. So this is developed, as I said, the same month of this consensus report. Harper's government, of course, ignores the consensus report for years, and instead comes out with his own report called Building the Canadian Advantage, a CSR strategy for the international extractive industries. And in Building a Canadian Advantage, he creates the office of the CSR counselor, which he gave to Marquita Evans, and he also spells out a new way forward for CEDA, or the Canadian International Development Agency, to pull money away from human rights organizations that are advocating on behalf of mining impacted communities and giving money to support CSR projects of mining companies. And it's no surprise that when the first CEDA initiative to actually give about $25 million to these CSR projects with mining companies was announced at a Devonshire Initiative CEO gala. So in a sense, you know, the Devonshire Initiative was this parallel institution that was created to undermine the roundtables on social responsibility. Next. So, this is just showing how the 4 pilot projects of CETA were first announced. Abai Bev Oda, who is the, CETA minister at a Devonshire gala. Next. So, this trend has been supported by now Monk School director Janice Stein, who wrote editorials, was quoted endlessly in articles, basically supporting the end of CETA's independence. So for those that don't know anymore at all, CETA no longer exists and has now been folded under the Department of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Development. And this move was explicitly made to align Canada's aid giving with Canada's trade and other foreign policies. So this means war agenda and trade agenda. And so, this is something that the Monk School, via Janice Stein, is very much supporting. I have a personal story with Janice Stein as well, where she actually went to a Monk at a U of T meeting once. And, she just said she wanted to make the case for the Monk School and defend the Monk School against allegations of Monk at a U of T. And so she made her case, and there was people at the meeting that were wanting to ask her some questions, particularly about the fact that Barrick Gold had sued academics in a SLAP suit, which is a strategic lawsuit against public participation, because of stuff they had said against Barrick Gold. And so one of the people in the audience, at the Monk at a U of T meeting, she was very curious, and she asked Janice Stein about Barrick's role in these SLAP suits. Janice Stein was like, "Oh, I don't know," and took this woman's email address. And she happened to be the executive director of the University of Toronto Student Union. Next. Within a couple days, Angela received an email and a threatening phone call from Barrick's lawyers, making vague accusations that the Monk at a U of T campaign was making false accusations about Barrick Gold, and they were very concerned that someone that was the executive director of the UTSU would be associating with people at Monk at a U of T campaign. Okay, 2 minutes. Next. So another character that I want to go over is Ignatieff. Michael Ignatieff, who is, a teacher, part-time lecturer within the Monk School, I believe. And within the mining justice community, he's known for not showing up for the vote for Bill C-300. And so this was a private member's bill that was created after Harper ignored the consensus report from the roundtables process to finally give extremely modest, legislation for corporate accountability for mining companies operating abroad. So Ignatieff did not show up for this vote, even though it was a liberal private member bill. So he kind of betrayed his own party in this. And this was a very big deal. This was like the first time any bill of its kind was even close to passing. It lost by 6 votes. But those of us in the mining justice community weren't super surprised by that, because a couple months before the vote, next slide. Previous slide, sorry. Previous slide. You can see that Ignatieff, a couple months before the Bill C-300 vote, was already being courted by the Monk School, something that he was denied as, what's the word? Baffling. So, of course, those know that the end of the story is that, yes, he did get hired by the Monk School when he completely failed his party on so many different levels. Next. And of course, this conference on Iran is the first questionable conference that the Monk School has promoted. Here we have Monk, Ignatieff, and then Vice General Vance, I believe is his name, who was a general during the Afghan War.
Not Lewis Mackenzie.
No, it's Vance for sure. I just forget his title before that. But anyway, so here the monk school is hosting a pro-war conference, having Afghan generals as honored guests. And Ignatieff is there dutifully playing his role as a wartime apologist. He's an author where he wrote several books, including Empire Light, Nation Building in Bosnia, Kosovo, and Afghanistan, where he's actually arguing for Empire Light, arguing that America has a responsibility to create a humanitarian empire through nation building and, if necessary, military force. Yeah. Another one of his books is The Lesser Evil, Political Ethics in an Age of Terror, where he justifies indefinite detention and coercive interrogations. He stops short of saying, I support torture, but it's basically there in between the lines. And that's another one of his books where he constructs this straw man of the threat of terror, and that justifies any means necessary to stamp it out. And just a note that Janice Stein, I believe it was the last book that she wrote in '95, was Powder Keg in the Middle East, where she argues that Iraq and Iran pose the greatest threat to regional stability. So these are just a few characters of the monk school that I think that you guys should be aware of when thinking about the monk school taking a leading role in framing the debate around Iran. I went slightly over time, so thank you so much for having me today.